It started with a locked drawer. A week after the showdown, I was cleaning out the old boathouse attached to my property, the one that hadn't been opened in years. A faded sign read, "Private Developer Use Only." Inside, dust coated everything like a memory that refused to fade. While rummaging through old files, I found it. A narrow metal drawer wedged beneath the desk, sealed with a rusted padlock. I pried it open with a crowbar. Inside were documents, dozens of them, marked Silver Pine Development Group. The first page made my stomach tighten. Transfer of maintenance rights, provisional HOA agreement, revoked 2015, revoked 10 years ago, which meant the HOA had no authority to operate. And yet they'd been collecting dues, enforcing laws and intimidating residents ever since. At the bottom of the pile was something worse, a ledger of maintenance fees paid in cash. Thousands of dollars, unreported, funneled through Marlene's signature. The realization hit hard. This wasn't about rules. It was about money, power, control. That night I walked the waterfront road, my flashlight cutting through mist. The homes that once looked perfect now seemed complicit, uniform shutters, identical mailboxes. A whole community built on fear of crossing a single woman's word. When I reached Marlene's property, her lights were still on. Through the blinds, I saw her pacing with the phone pressed to her ear. Her words floated through the window, muffled but sharp. "He found something. We need to shut this down before what, Marlene?" The next morning, I called the county records office. A calm voice confirmed what I already knew. The HOA's charter had expired a decade ago. "Technically," the clerk said, "there's no Silver Pine HOA anymore. It's just people pretending and profiting. I could have gone to the police right away, but I wanted proof. So I installed cameras along the dock, near the trails, even one hidden in an old birdhouse by the street. What they captured over the next few nights was damning. HOA members sneaking around my property, taking photos, meeting under cover of darkness near the community shed, and then the sound. A boat engine after midnight, gliding across the black water with no lights on. Two figures, one carrying a metal case. I uploaded the footage, labeled it Evidence, Silver Pine HOA Fraud, and sent it anonymously to every local news outlet I could find. By dawn, the emails were out. The storm had begun. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the fog lift from the lake. Somewhere across the water, a siren wailed. For the first time, I didn't feel watched. I felt in control. By the time the morning fog burned away, Silver Pine Lake wasn't quiet anymore. Police cruisers lined the main road. News vans trailed cables across driveways. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering as reporters shouted questions no one wanted to answer. The headlines spread like wildfire. Illegal HOA operation exposed. Waterfront residents scammed for years. Every channel carried it. The footage from my cameras played on loop. Marlene and her board sneaking through the night like ghosts guarding stolen gold. Within hours, the board dissolved. Tom and Richard resigned first, claiming ignorance. Marlene, though, refused to go down quietly. She stood on her porch, hair disheveled, screaming at cameras about community integrity and outsiders destroying tradition. But no one listened. For once, the lake didn't echo her voice back. I watched it unfold from my dock, coffee in hand. The same dock they'd once told me to tear down. A deputy stopped by to thank me for the evidence. "You did this place a favor," he said, glancing toward the commotion. Most of them were too scared to speak up. That night the air felt different, lighter, almost honest. The water rippled under moonlight, no longer a mirror of fear, but of freedom. Over the next week, residents began to emerge from their shells. A retired couple I'd never met brought me pie. Another neighbor, a quiet widower, offered to help repaint my shutters. The same unsightly ones I'd been fined for. One by one, they confessed the same story. Years of fines, threats, and silent resentment under Marlene's reign. I didn't blame them. I knew how control works. Slow, polite, poisonous. By month's end, the county repossessed the HOA office. Marlene faced charges for fraud and embezzlement. Her golf cart, once a symbol of her authority, sat rusting near the road, flat tires, engine silent. As for me, I rebuilt the boathouse, turned it into a small cafe by the water. Locals came for coffee, tourists for the view. Sometimes I'd catch snippets of laughter drifting from the dock, a sound Silverpine hadn't heard in years. The lake finally felt alive again. No rules, no fake authority, just people learning how to breathe. Some evenings I sit by the water and watch the sun sink behind the pines. The same horizon that once hid shadows now glows gold and open, and when the breeze whispers across the lake, I almost hear it say, "Welcome home." The morning sunlight danced over the rippling lake as my moving truck crunched up the gravel driveway. After 15 years in the city, the quiet of Silverpine Lake felt unreal, the kind of silence that hums with nature and secrets. I had finally bought my dream property, an old wooden lake house surrounded by towering pines and the sweet scent of water lilies. The real estate agent had told me the neighborhood was managed by the local Homeowners Association, but I barely paid attention. I wasn't moving here to join bake sales or attend community meetings. I wanted peace and maybe a chance to start over after my divorce. The house was perfect. Rustic porch, private dock, panoramic view of the lake. What wasn't perfect was the way my neighbors stared as my movers unloaded furniture. A trio of retirees stood across the road, whispering behind manicured hedges. A woman with a clipboard snapped photos of my truck. Another man, in a golf cart, circled twice before driving off. By noon I was sweaty, tired, and irritated. I waved at them, trying to be polite. No response, just judgmental stares. As I was setting up the boxes inside, a loud knock rattled the door. I opened it to find a thin woman with short grey hair, wearing a laminated badge that read, HOA President, Marlene Hart. "Hello," she said sharply. "We weren't notified of a new resident moving in. There are specific regulations for loading and vehicle parking in this community." I blinked. "I'm just moving in. Shouldn't be a problem, right?" Her eyes narrowed. "We'll see. I hope you've reviewed the HOA manual." She left a thick binder on my porch, as if handing me a subpoena, and stormed off. I stared at it, half amused, half annoyed. As dusk settled, I stood on the dock watching the sunset turn the lake into molten gold. The air was still, peaceful again. But behind me, from the shadowy tree line, I swore I saw movement, someone watching. When I turned around, no one was there. Only the sound of a car starting up the hill. It was my first night at Silverpine Lake, and already I could feel eyes on me. By the second day, the lake had lost its charm. The morning fog hung low, thick as breath on glass, and every sound felt amplified. The hum of boat engines in the distance, the crunch of gravel, the faint click of a camera shutter from somewhere behind the trees. I told myself I was being paranoid. New neighborhood, tight community, maybe they were just curious. But when I walked outside to grab coffee from the truck stop, there it was, a bright orange notice nailed to my mailbox. Violation Narcisero 1, unauthorized moving truck obstructing street access. Fine, $250. No signature, just the HOA logo, a smug pine tree inside a perfect circle. I tore it down and tossed it into the trash. That's when I noticed Marlene again, standing near her golf cart, clipboard in hand, pretending to write, but clearly watching me. "Morning," I said, forcing a smile. She didn't smile back. "We like to maintain order here." By noon, 3 more violations appeared, for boxes stacked on my porch, for a dog barking, I don't own one, and for unsightly paint color on my shutters. The same shutters that came with the house. I started filming just to protect myself. My phone filled with clips of HOA members creeping by in carts, snapping photos, whispering like schoolyard bullies. At sunset, the movers came back to collect the rented truck. One of them accidentally parked half on the curb. I didn't think much of it until I saw Marlene on the phone, pacing, her face twisted with fury. Then I heard it. "Yes, 911. There's a suspicious moving operation at 14 Lakeshore Drive. Possibly unauthorized squatters." "Please hurry," I froze. Was she serious? Within 15 minutes, the flashing red and blue lights cut through the evening fog. A patrol car rolled up my driveway, tires crunching against the gravel. 2 officers stepped out, hands resting on their holsters. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity," one said, scanning the area. "Suspicious?" I laughed, incredulous. "I'm the owner. I literally bought this house last week." Marlene marched down the road, flanked by 2 other HOA members, smug as a queen. "That's impossible," she said. "No one buys waterfront property here without board approval." One of the officers turned to me. "You have proof of ownership?" Wordlessly, I handed over the deed. The officer unfolded it, brows lifting as he read the signature line, and then slowly turned toward Marlene. "This says," he said carefully, "that Mr. Walker here owns not only this house, but all properties along the north waterfront. That includes your section." The silence was deafening. Marlene's expression flickered, disbelief, then horror. For the first time since moving in, I smiled. 3 days after the 911 incident, I got an email that read like a royal decree. Notice of formal review attendance required. Silverpine Homeowners Association board meeting. Subject, unauthorized occupancy and violation review. I almost laughed out loud. But I went anyway, partly out of curiosity, partly because I wanted to look Marlene in the eye and watch her crumble under the truth. The HOA's headquarters was a renovated boathouse beside the lake. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and a long folding table divided the board from the accused. It felt like walking into a courtroom built by people who watched too much daytime TV. Marlene sat at the center, flanked by 2 men in polos, Tom and Richard, I think. They both wore expressions of grave importance. "Mr. Walker," Marlene began crisply, "thank you for joining us. We have several pressing issues regarding your property." "My property," I repeated, taking the seat opposite them. "Glad you acknowledge that now." Tom cleared his throat. "There seems to be confusion about your ownership. You're aware that all waterfront properties fall under Silverpine's jurisdiction." "Actually," I said, sliding a folder across the table, "they used to, until the developer sold the land rights 10 years ago to the person who bought Lot 14. Marlene frowned. "And that would be—" I leaned back in the chair. "Me." The silence was delicious. I opened the folder and spread out a stack of documents, deed records, boundary maps, and a letter from the county registrar. The lakefront boundary was highlighted in thick blue ink. Every house along the shore, including Marlene's, Tom's, and Richard's, sat squarely within my private parcel. Richard blinked. "So you're saying—" "I'm not saying," I interrupted. "I'm showing. You've been collecting fees and issuing fines on land you don't legally manage. That's a fraud if we're being technical." Marlene's voice wavered. You can't just—" "Oh, I can," I said quietly. "And I could even charge you for trespassing every time your little golf cart crosses my dock." Tom shifted uncomfortably. This can't be right. The HOA owns the roads." "Nope," I pointed at the map. "County maintained. Public access." For a long moment, no one spoke. The ticking of the cheap wall clock filled the air. Finally, Marlene's mask cracked. "You think you can just buy your way in here and ruin everything we've built?" I smiled. "Not ruin. Redefine." I stood, collected my papers, and turned for the door. "By the way, Marlene, next time you call 911 on a property owner, make sure you're not standing on his land." Her voice broke behind me, part fury, part fear. The sound of power slipping away.